Chapter 1. Whispers of War. The silence of deep space hung thickly around the crew as the Dauntless drifted into an uncharted sector. Lieutenant Mara Collins, head of tactical operations, stared intently at her console, her fingers hovering over the screen as a soft, rhythmic beep disrupted the quiet hum of the bridge. Mara's gaze narrowed, adrenaline stirring in her veins. An encrypted distress signal blinked erratically across the console, its alien origin unmistakable. "Mara, don't touch it." Captain Rook's voice cut through the silence, sharp with warning. He stood beside her, arms crossed, his eyes a stern line fixed on the pulsing light. Mara's jaw tightened. "We can't ignore a distress signal out here. Protocol says we investigate." "Protocol isn't going to save us if it's a trap," Rook interjected, his expression unreadable. "You know as well as I do that this sector is Veil territory. Last time we crossed them, we barely made it out." The mention of the Veil sent a chill up Mara's spine. The Veil were a mysterious alien faction that lurked in the shadows, striking without warning and vanishing just as quickly. She'd encountered them before, a skirmish that had left half her squad dead and her mind haunted by their shadowy forms. But this signal was more than a curiosity. Something in its cadence felt familiar, like a call she couldn't ignore. "I'm telling you, Rook," Mara said, her voice laced with determination. "This is different. There's a code embedded in the signal, coordinates to a station. It's an old one, orbiting a dead planet. We won't get another chance to learn more about them." Rook exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples. "You really think this is worth risking the crew?" "Yes," she replied, unwavering. "If the Veil are here, they're hiding something big. We can't afford to stay in the dark." Rook hesitated, eyes flickering with both trust and fear. He knew Mara was right, but his survival instinct screamed against it. Finally, he nodded, a reluctant acknowledgement. "Fine." "We approach with caution. One wrong move, and we're out of there." "Understood." Mara's fingers flew over the console, decrypting the signal and setting a course. As the Dauntless drifted toward the coordinates, the ship's scanners brought the station into view, a hulking relic, scarred and silent, floating in the shadow of a desolate planet. Its metal frame twisted in on itself, as if it had survived countless battles, and a faint, eerie light pulsed within its core. As they approached the docking bay, the station seemed to come alive. Lights flickered along the entrance, casting eerie shadows across the hull. Mara and Rook exchanged a wary glance as the ship's lock engaged, securing them to the ancient structure. "Gear up," Rook ordered, his voice tense. "We're going in with full armor. No exceptions." The team assembled, helmets sealing with a hiss as they prepared to breach the station. The metallic clang of boots echoed through the empty corridor as they disembarked, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the dark interior. The station's corridors were dim and narrow, lined with alien glyphs that glowed faintly along the walls. The scent of cold metal and stale air filled Mara's helmet as they advanced. Her heart pounded as memories of her last encounter with the Veil flooded back. Shadowed figures, unnatural whispers, and the sickening silence that had followed. Rook took the lead, his flashlight cutting through the dark. "Keep an eye out for anything unusual. This place hasn't seen visitors in years, but that doesn't mean it's empty." They moved deeper, tension mounting with every step. Suddenly, Mara caught sight of a faint glow down one of the corridors. She gestured for Rook to follow, curiosity pushing her forward. The light led them into a large chamber filled with Veil artifacts. Strange, organic machinery lined the walls, some pulsing softly as if alive. At the center of the room stood a holographic display, flickering erratically. Mara's breath hitched as the hologram stabilized, revealing a recording of two human figures, both pleading, their voices hollowed by fear. "Please," one of them stammered, his eyes wide with terror. "We didn't know. We were just following orders." The image glitched, and the figures disappeared, leaving the room in silence. Mara's mind raced. Humanity had had only limited contact with the Veil, and every encounter had been shrouded in mystery. This recording was something she'd never seen, and it hinted at a grim reality she couldn't yet grasp. Rook's voice was barely a whisper. What the hell happened here? Mara shook her head, unable to answer. Her gut told her that this was a part of the Veil's hidden agenda, a piece of the puzzle that could explain their ruthlessness. But what had driven them to record such a twisted display? As they moved to exit the chamber, a low hum filled the air. The walls began to vibrate, and the glyphs along the corridor pulsed faster, illuminating the path back to their ship. Mara's pulse quickened as she glanced at Rook, who signaled for a swift retreat. But just as they turned, the corridor behind them sealed shut with a deafening clang, trapping them in the station's labyrinthine halls. Panic surged in Mara's chest, but she forced herself to focus. Looks like the Veil don't want us leaving, Rook muttered grimly, checking his weapon. Mara's voice was steely as she raised her gun, eyes narrowing in determination. Then we're going to make them regret letting us in? They braced themselves, tension thickening in the air. Somewhere deeper within the station, a shadow moved, silent and unseen, watching their every step. Chapter 2. The Veil's Domain. The hum of the alien station pressed in on Mara and her team, a low throb that seemed to echo their own pulse rates. Mara took a steadying breath, the metallic tang of her helmet's recycled air filling her lungs as her eyes scanned the corridor ahead. Captain Rook was just behind her, his stance taut as he surveyed their route with equal intensity. Any chance the station locked us in by accident? Rook muttered, his tone equal parts hope and sarcasm. Not likely, Mara replied, her voice unwavering despite the knot forming in her stomach. The Veil doesn't operate on accidents. This is deliberate. Ahead, the corridor narrowed into a series of branching hallways, each dimly lit with that eerie, organic glow from the alien glyphs pulsing rhythmically along the walls. Mara's fingers tightened around her weapon. She could feel an unseen presence, like the weight of watching eyes pressing in from every direction. The station was alive, and it knew they were here. Rook checked his scanner, its display flickering as it struggled to read the alien tech around them. Whatever runs this place is scrambling our systems, he murmured, his voice low. This doesn't feel like an abandoned station. It feels like a trap. Mara nodded, her jaw set. The memory of the holographic recording they'd witnessed moments before still lingered, the terrified faces of those human prisoners haunting her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being herded, lured towards something sinister lurking in the heart of the station. As they rounded another corner, the team froze. Ahead of them was a vast, open chamber, its walls lined with strange, alien machinery that pulsed and shifted as though breathing. A network of conduits ran along the walls, connecting to a central console at the room's center. A bizarre structure that seemed more biological than mechanical, with veins of faintly glowing blue threading through its surface. "Is that alive?" whispered Davis, one of the junior officers, his voice cracking slightly. Rook glanced back, his brow furrowed. Eyes forward. "Stay sharp." Mara approached the console, cautiously extending a gloved hand. Her fingertips brushed its surface, and the console reacted instantly, its glow intensifying as symbols began scrolling across its display. The characters shifted rapidly, blurring before her eyes, yet she could sense some kind of message encoded in the chaotic patterns. Suddenly, the display froze, and a distorted, guttural voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language she didn't understand. The words reverberated through her helmet, a mix of sounds that were almost human, but not quite. Rook stepped forward, his weapon at the ready. "What's it saying, Mara?" "I don't know," she murmured, brow creasing in concentration. "But it's definitely speaking directly to us." The glyphs on the walls began to glow brighter, and an ominous energy filled the air. Mara could feel the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. This wasn't just a message. It was a warning. Without warning, a dark, sinuous shape detached itself from the shadows at the far end of the room. Mara's breath caught as the figure moved toward them, its form shifting like smoke, blending seamlessly with the shadows. It was a Veil, an advanced member of the species, its towering frame cloaked in a shroud of darkness that absorbed the ambient light. "Steady," Rook hissed, raising his weapon. "Everyone fall back." "Mara, get behind me." Mara shook her head, stepping forward. No, I'm the reason we're here. I'll face it. Before Rook could argue, the veil spoke, its voice a rasping, inhuman sound that sent a chill down Mara's spine. Yet the words, distorted and broken, were unmistakably in English. Human, it said, as if the word itself was a curse. You invade. You destroy. Mara swallowed hard, her heart pounding. We came in response to a distress call. What happened to the humans who were here? The veil tilted its head, its eyes, if they were eyes, glinting with a cold, alien intelligence. They sought knowledge forbidden. They suffer, as will you. The words hit her like a physical blow, and Mara could feel the weight of the veil's threat. She clenched her fists, fighting the rising fear. We don't want a war, she said, her voice steady. But we're not leaving until we understand what you're doing here. The veil's form flickered, shifting like mist caught in a storm. Knowledge has a cost. Suddenly, it lunged faster than Mara could react. Rook shoved her aside, firing his weapon as the veil's shadowy form twisted and writhed, its movements a blur. The rest of the team sprang into action, firing in tandem, but their shots seemed to pass through the veil's form, hitting the walls and sending shards of metal clattering to the floor. Mara scrambled to her feet, adrenaline surging as she searched for a weakness. Her gaze landed on the central console, its glow intensifying with each passing second, feeding energy to the veil. The connection was unmistakable. Rook, the console, it's keeping it alive. Rook's eyes narrowed, and he nodded, shouting orders to the team. Redirect your fire. Target the console. They focused their shots on the central console, and as the energy drained, the veil's form flickered, its attack slowing. With one final, desperate surge, the team managed to destroy the console, and the veil let out a piercing scream, its form dissipating into wisps of smoke that faded into the darkness. The silence that followed was deafening. Mara's chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath, her hands still trembling. The veil was gone, but its warning lingered in the air, heavy and foreboding. Rook walked over, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. Mara, what's really going on here? You're not just looking for answers, are you? She looked up, meeting his gaze. This isn't just about the veil. They're hiding something that could change everything for humanity. I need to know what they're protecting, and I think it's bigger than any of us. Rook studied her, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Then we'd better be ready for whatever comes next. As they turned to leave, a deep rumble echoed through the station, and the walls began to shift, closing in around them. The veil's final trap had been set. This chapter increases the suspense and danger, driving both plot and character motivations, while setting up a cliffhanger for Chapter 3. Let me know if there are areas you'd like me to expand or adjust. Chapter 3. The Heart of the Veil. The station trembled around them, the walls seeming to close in with each shuddering quake. Mara's heart raced as she scanned the narrowing corridor, her mind scrambling for a solution. Every instinct urged her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The veil's final trap was set, and it seemed intent on burying them. Move, move! Rook barked, propelling the team forward. They sprinted, ducking under beams as the corridor warped and twisted around them, conduits and walls folding like the innards of a vast machine. Davis, options? Mara called over her shoulder, but Davis's face was pale, his focus glued to the tablet in his hands as he frantically typed, watching schematics glitch and warp with the station's movements. We're almost to the central chamber, just a little farther, Davis managed, voice shaking. But it's sealed shut. I don't know if I can open it in time. Rook's voice was steady, but Mara could sense the tension beneath it. You're gonna have to, Davis. It's that or get crushed here. Mara looked at the walls, now crawling with that sinister blue energy, the same glow that had powered the veil. Every flash of light seemed to pulse with menace, filling the corridor with flickering shadows. Whatever was controlling the station wasn't done with them yet. Keep your focus, Davis. We need that door open, Mara said, locking eyes with him. She could see his fear, but behind it, a spark of determination. Davis nodded, his fingers moving even faster over his tablet. They reached the end of the corridor, a heavy, metallic door, sealed tight and bristling with alien glyphs. Mara didn't wait. She holstered her weapon and pressed her hands against the door, searching for a way to open it. The glyphs responded, pulsing in strange, swirling patterns beneath her fingers. The sensation was unsettling, like touching something organic and alive. "Almost got it," Davis muttered, his brow furrowed. With a final tap, the glyphs surged with light, and the door groaned open, splitting down the center to reveal a cavernous chamber beyond. Mara's breath caught. The room was vast, lit with a dim, cold glow. Strange, floating structures hummed along the ceiling, casting a sickly blue light that illuminated the chamber's centerpiece. A colossal, crystalline structure, suspended in the air by unseen forces. It pulsed in sync with the walls, radiating an energy that made the hair on Mara's arms stand on end. "What is that?" whispered another officer, his voice barely audible in the vast silence. Mara stepped forward, unable to look away from the structure. She could feel it, an insidious hum, like a heartbeat, vibrating through the air. It was the heart of the station, and somehow, she knew it was tied to the Veil's power. Rook was close behind her. Whatever it is, that's what the Veil wanted to protect. Mara nodded, her eyes narrowing. "And we're not leaving until we find out why." She approached a console near the crystal, her fingers brushing the alien symbols etched into its surface. The interface was different from anything she'd ever seen. Lines and shapes that shifted in response to her touch, forming complex patterns that seemed to dance under her fingers. "Can you read this, Mara?" Rook asked, his voice tense but curious. She shook her head, focusing intently. "Not exactly, but I think it's a containment system." The realization hit her like a shockwave. This crystal, it's holding something inside. Davis stepped closer, his eyes wide. "Are you saying this whole station is built around that?" Before Mara could answer, the crystal pulsed, its light intensifying. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the chamber, filling her mind with strange, fragmented images, visions of distant worlds, of humans and Veil alike, locked in endless struggle. And at the center of it all, the crystal's dark heart, a core of secrets that humanity wasn't meant to uncover. Suddenly, an alien voice echoed through the chamber, the same distorted, inhuman tones they'd heard before. "You have come far, but your knowledge ends here." Mara spun around, weapon drawn, but the Veil's shadowy figure wasn't behind them. It was within the crystal, a dark shape trapped in the light, twisting and writhing as though desperate to break free. The realization hit her. This isn't just a containment system. It's a prison. Rook's gaze hardened. "Are you saying the Veil was here to guard it?" The voice filled the chamber again, colder this time, brimming with ancient malice. "You cannot understand, cannot grasp the cost of knowledge." The crystal began to fracture, fissures spiderwebbing across its surface as the Veil's form struggled within. Mara's pulse spiked. Whatever was contained here was breaking free, and they were running out of time. "We need to go now," Mara said, grabbing Rook's arm. "If this thing breaks loose, then it won't just be us," Rook finished grimly. "It'll be every human colony within reach." Davis's voice trembled. "Then what do we do?" Mara looked back at the crystal, her mind racing. There had to be a way to stabilize it, to prevent whatever was inside from escaping. She turned back to the console, her fingers moving over the glyphs in a desperate attempt to find the right sequence. The interface shifted, symbols merging and reforming, responding to her touch in a way that felt almost familiar. "Mara, hurry!" Rook shouted as the chamber began to shake, dust and debris falling from the ceiling. With a final tap, Mara activated the console, and the crystal's glow dimmed, the fissures closing as it stabilized. The Veil's form grew still, its voice a fading whisper in her mind. "Your victory is temporary. Knowledge cannot be imprisoned forever." The hum faded, leaving a deep, oppressive silence. Mara's hands trembled as she stepped back from the console, breathing heavily. They'd succeeded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, that they'd opened a door that couldn't be closed. Rook placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice quiet but resolute. "We need to report this. Humanity has a right to know what's out here." Mara nodded, the weight of their discovery settling over her like a shroud. "Yes, but we'd better be ready. The Veil won't forget this." As they turned to leave, the crystal pulsed once, as if in warning. The station might be quiet for now, but Mara knew that they hadn't seen the last of whatever lay within its depths. This chapter builds the suspense and reveals crucial information while increasing tension, leading to a moment of resolution that hints at further challenges to come. Let me know if you'd like adjustments. Chapter 4: Unbound Revelation. The silence in the shuttle was dense as they sped away from the Veil station, its hulking shape now just a shadow in the distance. Mara sat by the viewport, her eyes fixed on the looming black of space as her mind raced, replaying the haunting voice from within the crystal. Asterisk knowledge cannot be imprisoned forever. Asterisk. Rook's voice broke the stillness. "You all right?" Mara looked up, surprised to find her hand still trembling. She clenched her fist, trying to steady herself. "It's just that thing in the crystal. Whatever it is, we barely managed to contain it." Rook nodded, his face unreadable. "You did well, Mara. We wouldn't have made it out if it weren't for you." A faint smile crossed her lips, but it faded quickly. "I just keep thinking that was a warning, Rook. The Veil left it there to be found, to show us what's at stake. They wanted us to know." Rook leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "If that's true, then we have a bigger problem. Humanity's barely scratched the surface of what's out here. And that thing back there? It was just one artifact in one station." He paused, his gaze hardening. "We're not ready for whatever else the Veil has hidden." Davis, who'd been silently poring over the data they'd gathered, finally spoke up. "The Veil was here for a reason, monitoring that crystal, keeping it contained, but now we've disrupted it. Humanity has no idea what they're about to unearth." Mara nodded, her mind drifting to the fractured images that had flooded her mind when she'd touched the console. A fractured universe, shadows lurking at the edges of known space. "If we're going to survive, we need to understand what we're dealing with. Knowledge might be dangerous, but ignorance—" She trailed off, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Davis looked up, a flicker of determination replacing his earlier fear. "We'll report everything, but we need to be careful about who gets access to this information. If the wrong people start tinkering with this technology—" Mara's expression hardened. "I agree. Some knowledge should come with a warning." As they neared the main ship, the shuttle's comms crackled, and Captain Thorne's voice filled the cabin. "Team, report." Rook tapped his comms. "We've secured the data and contained the Veil's artifact, Captain. But there's more going on here than we initially thought. We may have awakened something." A tense silence followed. Then Thorne's voice returned, grim and controlled. "Understood. Prepare for debrief as soon as you dock." Minutes later, they stepped into the main hangar, where Thorne waited with his arms crossed, eyes sharp. "I want a full report. Every detail." They gathered in the debrief room, an austere space with dark walls and a single glowing table at its center. As Mara began recounting their experience, she noticed how the atmosphere grew heavier, the reality of their discovery sinking in. Each team member shared their perspective, filling in the gaps. The crystal's pulsing energy, the whispers in Mara's mind, the visions of cosmic chaos. Thorne listened, his expression stoic but his eyes betraying a flicker of concern. When they finished, he let out a deep breath. "This changes things. If the Veil was keeping something dangerous locked away, we need to understand their motives. Humanity's expansion has been aggressive. We've assumed the universe is ours to explore. But this," he gestured to the screen displaying a rendering of the crystal, still pulsing with ominous energy, "suggests we're not as alone as we thought." Rook spoke up, his voice steady but weighted. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Thorne nodded. "Go ahead, Rook. We may need to slow down. Humanity's progress is rapid, reckless even. If we don't approach these discoveries with caution, we'll be facing threats we can't handle." Thorne's gaze was fixed on the image of the crystal. You're suggesting we halt exploration? Not halt, but change our approach, Rook said firmly. We can't charge forward without understanding the risks. The Veil might not be our enemy. They may be guardians of a sort, keeping things we're not ready for out of reach. The room was silent, the implications of Rook's words settling heavily over them. Mara, looking at the image of the crystal, felt a surge of resolve. If we're going to move forward, we have to be ready to listen, to learn. The Veil may see us as threats because we act like threats. Davis nodded. We could open a line of communication, find a way to show we're here to understand, not to destroy. Thorne rubbed his chin, his gaze distant. Diplomacy with an unknown force. It's a risk, but if we continue as we are, it's a certainty that we'll encounter something we can't control. We've seen that already. Mara felt a spark of hope. This could be the beginning of a new era, a chance for humanity to coexist with the universe rather than conquer it. I'll lead the effort, sir. I've touched the Veil's technology, felt its warning. I know the stakes. Thorne gave her a long, appraising look before nodding. Then we moved forward cautiously. This mission will be classified strictly need to know. Humanity can't afford another misstep. As they left the debrief, Mara and Rook lingered in the hallway, exchanging a glance. The weight of their discovery still clung to them, but for the first time, there was a shared understanding. We're part of something bigger now, Rook said, breaking the silence. Mara nodded. And if we handle it right, maybe, just maybe, we'll prove that humanity deserves to be here. They walked toward the bridge side by side, knowing that their path forward would be anything but easy. But they also knew they wouldn't be alone in facing it. This final chapter ties up the immediate story while setting up potential for future exploration and conflict. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments.